Welcome, listeners, to another deep dive where we sift through, mountains of information to bring you the most compelling insights.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're embarking on a fascinating journey through India's foreign policy in 2023. Now, you might think of foreign policy as, dense, full of diplomatic jargon,
It can be, definitely.
but we promise this deep dive is packed with surprising facts, global connections, and hopefully more than a few aha moments.
I think it will be.
We have before us this extensive annual report, absolutely brimming with details about India's engagement with the world last year. As we start to unpack this material, what immediately jumps out at you?
Well, what's truly fascinating, I think, is how the report explicitly labels 2023 a watershed year for Indian foreign policy.
A watershed year. That's strong language.
It really is. It's not just a casual observation. It suggests a significant turning point. It highlights what it calls an intense and fruitful engagement, which clearly reflects India's rising international profile and global stature. So, this really sets the stage for a year where, despite a truly complex global environment, marked by stress, ongoing conflicts, significant economic challenges, India managed to project this remarkable sense of renewed confidence. It paints a compelling narrative, really, of a nation not just reacting to turbulence, but actively, redefining and elevating its position on the global stage.
Okay, a watershed year and renewed confidence. Those are definitely powerful phrases.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to truly understand the scope and the impact of India's foreign policy in 2023.
Right.
We'll be looking at everything from its leadership on major global platforms like the G20 to the nuanced, often complex bilateral relationships it maintained, and even its tangible humanitarian footprint around the world. We're aiming to extract the core actions, the strategic thinking behind them, and crucially, the real-world, tangible outcomes.
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in.
So the report kicks off by describing 2023 as a year of immense global stress. What specifically were these interconnected challenges that India found itself navigating? It sounds like, more than just business as usual on the international front.
That's a great way to put it, actually. It really wasn't business as usual. The sources make it very clear that the international system in 2023 faced this truly complex, intertwined web of challenges. We're talking about long-standing structural inequities, issues like unequal access to resources, uneven global development, things that were significantly aggravated by the lingering, pervasive effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, the pandemic shadow is still long.
Absolutely. That health crisis had already put immense strain on global supply chains, economies.
Right.
It created a really fragile environment. And then on top of that, we saw a surge in prices and severe disruptions to supply chains.
Which the report links to specific conflicts.
Yes, it directly attributes them to conflicts, specifically mentioning those in Europe, West Asia, and other parts of the world. These geopolitical tensions weren't isolated events. They created ripple effects impacting economies and societies far beyond the immediate conflict zones.
Makes sense.
And furthermore, you had persistent resource challenges, financial constraints limiting development and growth in many nations, disrupted trade networks hindering recovery.
And climate change didn't take a break either, I assume.
Not at all. An increasing frequency of climate events, devastating floods, severe droughts added considerable burdens, particularly for countries in the global south. They often bear the brunt of these interconnected crises, making it an incredibly challenging landscape to navigate.
So it wasn't just a regular year. It was a period where India really had to find its footing amidst significant global headwinds, and do so with a clear strategy, presumably. How did India respond? Was it simply reacting, or did it take a more proactive stance?
That's a really important question, the proactive versus reactive one. And the report is quite explicit here. It states, India took an active stance on a number of issues, including security, technology, trade, and climate change.
So definitely not passive.
Not at all. This wasn't about passively observing global chaos. India deliberately engaged on these critical areas that really define the modern international landscape. They also made concerted efforts to strengthen strategic partnerships with what the report calls like-minded countries.
Which implies a deliberate alignment.
Exactly. A deliberate alignment with nations sharing similar values, perhaps democratic principles, or strategic interests in navigating these complex challenges together. And if we connect this to that bigger picture phrase, the renewed confidence.
Right, the renewed confidence.
India aimed to offer this to the world, and it wasn't just diplomatic rhetoric. It was deeply backed by tangible domestic progress. robust economic growth providing a stable foundation, transformative domestic reforms indicating a commitment to internal strength and efficiency, and the successful implementation of technology-enabled public service delivery, showcasing a modern, effective governance model.
So the confidence was built on something solid internally.
Precisely. This proactive and internally strengthened approach allowed India to project a distinct sense of stability, reliability, and, well, potential onto a turbulent global stage.
That renewed confidence is powerful, especially with that backing. Was there a sort of flagship example of this confidence and India's commitment to global solidarity in action, something that really made a global impact?
Absolutely. A standout example given in the report, which really demonstrates this commitment to global health and solidarity, is India's mammoth contribution of over 30 crore COVID-19 vaccine doses to 101 countries and international organizations.
30 crore, that's 300 million doses.
Wow. Exactly. 300 million. Just think about that scale for a moment. This was not just a small-scale aid effort. The sheer volume, distributed across over 100 nations and various international bodies, underscores a massive, coordinated effort.
It goes beyond just aid then.
Oh, definitely. This wasn't merely humanitarian assistance. It was, in many ways, a masterclass in vaccine diplomacy, you could say. At a time when many developed nations were, understandably perhaps, prioritizing their own populations, sometimes even hoarding supplies. India strategically leveraged its pharmaceutical prowess, the whole pharmacy of the world idea, to build immense goodwill and demonstrate its reliability, not just in words, but in tangible action.
So it really cemented that pharmacy of the world image.
It absolutely did. It countered narratives that often painted developing nations as mere recipients of aid, and instead showcased India as a crucial global provider and partner, a really significant move.
And speaking of global contributions, the report also highlights India's role as a first responder in crises. This seems to go beyond just offering aid later, speaking more to rapid deployment readiness.
Yes, exactly. This really solidifies India's role as a key player beyond its borders, emphasizing its immediate active intervention capabilities in times of crisis. The source notes India was one of the first countries to initiate search, rescue, and relief operations after a devastating earthquake struck Turkey in February 2023.
And that wasn't just sending money, right? It was people, equipment.
Precisely. It involved deploying specialized search and rescue teams, medical personnel, essential relief resources directly into the affected area. And what's particularly notable is that simultaneously, India also sent crucial relief supplies to Syria.
Right. Also hit hard by that earthquake.
Exactly, demonstrating a kind of dual-front humanitarian effort. Then later in the year, in December, it announced immediate relief assistance to Papua New Guinea in the wake of a volcanic eruption.
So responding quickly, even in different regions, different types of disasters.
Yes, highlighting its promptness, even in distant regions like the Pacific. And beyond these acute large-scale events, the report clarifies that throughout 2023, India consistently continued to provide ongoing humanitarian aid to places like Ukraine, Palestine, Myanmar, Afghanistan, and Nepal.
So a sustained effort alongside the rapid response.
Correct. This consistent, widespread engagement illustrates a deep-seated commitment to supporting populations in distress, reinforcing its image as a reliable and swift first responder willing to step up when needed.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting for 2023. India's G20 presidency. This was a truly historic moment, wasn't it? Taking on such a massive global leadership role for the very first time.
Indeed. It was absolutely a landmark year. India assumed the G20 presidency for the first time ever on December 1st, 2022, and carried that mantle right through 2023.
And it wasn't just about the big summit, was it?
No, not at all. What's fascinating here is the report clearly outlines this unique dual objective. It wasn't just about leading those high-level global discussions among world leaders behind closed doors. The aim was also to make it a people's G20 through the spirit of Jan Bhagidari.
Jan Bhagidari, people's participation.
Exactly. Citizen participation, people's involvement. This is deliberate, conscious effort to, demystify the G20, which is often seen as this elite diplomatic forum.
Right, very distant for most people.
Very distant. And bring it closer to the everyday people of India. It was about creating a sense of national ownership, involvement across the country, ensuring the presidency resonated not just in diplomatic circles, but at a grassroots level, a truly national endeavor.
That's quite a unique approach for a G20 host.
It really was quite unprecedented and set India's presidency apart.
And the theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future, rooted in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That ancient philosophy must have resonated deeply, especially in a fractured world. What was the scale of the preparations, particularly with that People's G20 ambition? It sounds enormous.
Well, that ancient philosophy, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, it really did find resonance globally. It provided this unifying, inclusive framework for the discussions, which was quite powerful amidst all the global fragmentation and the scale of preparations. To put it mildly, unprecedented for India. The report meticulously details it. India hosted over 200 G20 meetings in 32 different work streams in 60 cities across the country.
Wow, 60 cities. Over 200 meetings.
Just imagine the logistics. Coordinating and executing that many high-level international meetings in such diverse locations, it wasn't just about New Delhi.
No, clearly not.
It was a conscious strategic decision to showcase India's vast diversity, its culture, its economic dynamism, its developing infrastructure by decentralizing these meetings.
So giving different regions a chance to engage directly.
Exactly. It allowed various regions to engage directly with global leaders and delegates, fostering more inclusive participation while also presenting this comprehensive, vibrant picture of India to the world. It really transformed a diplomatic event into a national engagement.
Now, a key element you mentioned earlier, and the report highlights, is India's effort to incorporate the views of the Global South. How was this specifically done? Because often those voices get marginalized.
It absolutely was a significant strategic move and very indicative of India's commitment to multilateralism and its role as a leading voice for the developing world, to specifically and proactively bring in these views.
Yeah.
India organized a 2-day Voice of Global South Summit on January 12-13, 2023. Critically, it was held entirely virtually.
So lowering participation barriers.
Precisely. It allowed for much broader, more inclusive engagement. The summit had 10 sessions in total and saw participation from leaders and ministers from 125 developing countries of the Global South.
125 countries, that's substantial.
It really is. Far from a token gesture, it showed a clear, deliberate intent to elevate their concerns, their priorities, their aspirations directly into the G20 agenda. India effectively amplified voices that might otherwise struggle to be heard in these top-tier economic forums.
Then came the actual G20 Leaders Summit in New Delhi in September. Given those immense geopolitical tensions, we talked about the war in Europe, other frictions achieving consensus on a joint declaration must have been, well, a monumental task. Many doubted it could happen.
It was, without exaggeration, a monumental achievement, and a true testament to India's diplomacy that a consensus New Delhi Leaders Summit declaration was produced, despite an environment of rising geopolitical tensions and differences.
So they managed to bridge the gaps.
They did. Many observers, as you said, had predicted failure, given the deep divisions, but India managed it through sustained, pragmatic diplomacy, and the declaration itself was incredibly comprehensive.
What kind of issues did it cover?
A wide array. It specifically tackled the impact of conflicts on food, energy, and financial stability, recognizing those crucial interconnections. It emphasized the urgent need for sustainable growth, balancing environment and economy. It highlighted the role of digital public infrastructure in trade, a key Indian push. It called for strengthening multilateral financial institutions, addressed the pressing issue of debt in disadvantaged nations.
So, real bread and butter global issues.
Absolutely. Plus, it championed gender equality for the 2030 agenda, and crucially, it included a condemnation of terrorism in all its forms. Getting consensus on all that amidst such fragmentation was arguably the defining diplomatic success of the presidency.
That's incredibly broad to get everyone on board. Were there any particularly groundbreaking initiatives or inclusions that came out of the summit, things that really pushed the boundaries, moved beyond just the declaration text?
Yes, absolutely. 2 major achievements from New Delhi stand out as genuinely groundbreaking, I think, showing India's forward-looking leadership.
Okay.
First, India successfully proposed and secured the inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20.
That's huge for global representation.
Massive! It transforms the G20, giving an entire continent a direct voice at the top table, rectifying a significant historical imbalance.
And the second?
Second, India initiated the ambitious India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC.
Yes, IMEC. Big news.
Huge news. A bold project aiming to boost regional integration, enhance connectivity, potentially redefine global trade routes. It's a major geopolitical and economic play.
Definitely one to watch.
And one more, not to forget, the launch of the Global Biofuels Alliance, bringing together 19 countries and 12 international organizations, aiming to accelerate biofuel adoption globally, promoting energy transition.
So concrete actions, not just words.
Exactly. These initiatives show a vision for a more inclusive, connected, and sustainable global future, moving beyond declarations to collaborative frameworks.
So the G20 journey didn't just end with the September summit in Delhi, did it? What was the purpose of the second Voice of Global South summit later and that virtual G20 leaders summit? It seems like India was really committed to follow through.
You're absolutely right. The presidency was characterized by a very strong emphasis on follow-through, sustained engagement. It wasn't a one-off event. The second Voice of Global South Summit on November 17th was specifically designed to share the beneficial outcomes and progress achieved during the G20 presidency. It was about accountability, reporting back to the Global South on how their priorities had translated into action.
Closing the loop, essentially.
Precisely. And also to deliberate the way forward for the Global South, fostering continued collaboration. The PM summarized key points into 10 guiding principles for future cooperation.
And the virtual summit a few days later.
That virtual G20 Leaders Summit on November 22nd was primarily to review and accelerate progress on the outcomes of the September summit. It showed the sustained, proactive commitment to ensuring decisions were being implemented, not just left on paper, reinforcing India's role as a responsible, proactive leader.
Okay, moving beyond the grand global stage of the G20, India has this very defined approach to its immediate surroundings, the neighborhood first policy. What exactly does this policy entail? How does it fit into the broader picture?
Right. The Neighborhood First policy is explicitly described as an institutional priority for India. That means it's a guiding principle across government, directing policy towards its immediate neighbors: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka.
So everyone right next door.
Essentially, yes. It's been a defining feature since 2014, conceived with a specific strategic purpose: forge strong, stable, mutually beneficial relations based on a consultative, non-reciprocal, and outcome-oriented approach.
What does non-reciprocal mean in this context?
It means India aims to engage without necessarily expecting immediate, direct returns for every action. The focus is more on long-term benefits, mutual respect, addressing shared challenges collaboratively. It's about building trust, fostering connectivity, understanding that a stable, prosperous neighborhood is fundamental to India's own security and growth.
It's the bedrock of the regional strategy, then.
Excellent.
Let's dive into some specifics, starting with Afghanistan. Given the ongoing complex humanitarian and political situation there, what was India's approach in 2023? It's a very sensitive context.
It is indeed very sensitive. India's approach was carefully guided by its historical relations, that sense of friendship with the Afghan people, and relevant UN resolutions, instead of disengaging entirely.
Which some countries did.
Right. India maintained a presence. Since June 2022, an Indian technical team has been based in Kabul, actively supporting the population with crucial humanitarian assistance.
And in 2023.
In 2023, this saw significant contributions: 50,000 metric tons of wheat, 250 tons of medical aid, and 28 tons of earthquake relief aid. These vital supplies were distributed through partners like the UN World Food Program, UNOCHA, the Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, and the Afghan Red Crescent Society to ensure wide reach.
So working through established channels.
Yes. And education remained a significant focus, too, showing a long-term commitment. India granted fresh admissions to more than 2,000 Afghan students, notably including 301 girls under the ICCR scholarship scheme.
That's important, the focus on girls' education.
Absolutely. And they initiated online scholarships for 1,000 more students, plus collaborations in agricultural sciences. India even partnered with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime to assist Afghan drug users, providing hygiene kits, baby food, medical aid.
That's a very comprehensive range of support.
It really is. It underscores a sustained humanitarian and developmental commitment amidst very challenging circumstances.
Okay, shifting focus now. How about Bangladesh? Described as a crucial element of this policy. What progress was made there in 2023?
Bangladesh is indeed highlighted as crucial, and the already strong relationship saw further advancement. It's explicitly named India's top regional trading partner in the neighborhood.
That's significant.
Very. Robust economic ties. Bilateral trade reached USD 14.22 billion in 2022-23, making India Bangladesh's largest Asian export market. That economic connection is a cornerstone.
And connectivity.
A key development facilitating trade and connectivity was the operationalization of the Agreement on the Use of the Chattogram and Mongla ports, formally signed in May 2023. This allows India to use these crucial maritime gateways.
Improving trade routes.
Exactly. And during Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's visit for the G20, 3 significant MOUs were signed on digital payments, cultural exchange, and agricultural research.
And development partnership.
That's a top priority. India has extended about USD 10 billion in concessional financing loans and grants, making it Bangladesh's largest development partner. Several big projects funded by these lines of credit were completed in 2023, like the Kolnamangla Port Rail Line.
So major infrastructure links.
Yes, plus many high-impact community development projects building hostels, skill centers, cultural sites continue across Bangladesh. It's a deeply intertwined and growing partnership.
And Bhutan. Often seen as a cornerstone of India's Himalayan diplomacy. How did that exemplary relationship evolve?
The relationship with Bhutan is indeed described as exemplary and saw significant growth in 2023. The focus was on enhancing cross-border connectivity, trade, investment, and deepening cooperation in education, energy, youth skilling, technology.
High-level visits continue to be important.
Very much so. The King of Bhutan visited India twice in 2023, in April and November, underscoring the strategic importance and personal warmth. India remains Bhutan's top trading partner, accounting for about 80% of Bhutan's overall trade.
Wow, 80%.
It's substantial. And hydropower cooperation remains a central pillar. India is constructing 2 major hydroelectric projects there, Punat Sanchu and Punat Sangchu 2.
Big energy projects.
Yes, and beyond that, India provided substantial financial assistance for various development initiatives, project-tied assistance, community development projects, program grants, a trade support facility, all part of Bhutan's 12th five-year plan. It's extensive support across multiple sectors.
Moving south to the islands, what were the key aspects of India's engagement with the Maldives? That relationship has a crucial strategic dimension in the Indian Ocean.
That's right. The relationship with the Maldives is deeply intertwined with both neighborhood first and the broader cyber security and growth for all in the region outlook. These 2 frameworks work together.
How did that manifest in 2023?
High-level visits underscored the strengthening ties. The External Affairs Minister visited the northern atolls in January. The Raksha Mantri, the defense minister, visited in May, focusing specifically on enhancing defense cooperation, which is vital for maritime security there.
And beyond defense?
Bilateral trade reached USD 414 million in 2023, showing growing economic links. On the development front, India supports over 65 high-impact grant projects in health, education, capacity building, culture, sports projects directly benefiting local communities. Plus, India is supporting 7 large infrastructure projects under lines of credit. So it's a comprehensive engagement strategy, reinforcing India's commitment to the Maldives' socioeconomic progress and stability in that critical maritime space.
Now, Myanmar. Mentioned as an important land link to ASEAN, but with those significant security concerns we touched on earlier. How did India navigate that complex situation, especially given the implications for its own northeastern borders?
Myanmar is indeed vital, the land link to ASEAN, strong historical ties. But the report is clear. The current security and humanitarian situation in Myanmar has remained a cause of concern, with direct implications for India's border security in the northeast.
So what's India's stance?
India's diplomatic stance has been consistent. A call for complete cessation of violence, resolution through dialogue, release of political detainees, and Myanmar's return to the path of democratic transition at the earliest. A preference for a peaceful, democratic, stable Myanmar.
But engagement continued.
Yes. Despite the internal challenges, India maintains a significant development cooperation portfolio of about USD 2 billion, mostly grant and aid. This shows a continued commitment to the welfare of the Myanmar people, rather than disengagement.
Any specific projects?
A notable achievement in 2023 was the inauguration of Sitwe Port in May. That's a crucial part of the Caledon Multimodal Transit Transport Project, vital for connectivity, providing an alternative route for India to access its northeast and a maritime outlet for Myanmar.
So balancing strategic interests, humanitarian concerns, and calls for democracy.
It's a careful balancing act, yes.
And in Nepal, always a close neighbor, deep historical and cultural ties. What was the progress there in 2023?
The bilateral relationship with Nepal consistently gained momentum through 2023, with a strong focus on enhancing connectivity and capacity building. High-level interactions were key.
Like the visit of the Nepalese PM.
Exactly. Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachanda visited India in May-June. They conducted a comprehensive review of the entire bilateral agenda, signaling deep engagement.
And India's assistance continues.
Substantially. India provides significant financial and technical assistance for infrastructure, particularly connectivity projects, rail links, roads, integrated checkposts, mostly under grant assistance to improve cross-border movement.
And smaller projects, too.
Yes, numerous small development projects or high-impact community development projects across education, health, rural infrastructure, directly benefiting communities throughout Nepal.
And the first responder role came into play again.
It did. After the earthquake in western Nepal in November 2023, India promptly provided 4 batches of relief materials, demonstrating immediate support in a time of crisis, reinforcing that commitment to Nepal's stability.
Okay, now the report also mentions Pakistan, often a complex, sensitive relationship. What was India's stated stance and the nature of interaction in 2023?
India's position, as stated, is clear. It desires normal neighborly relations. However, and this is crucial, this desire is qualified by the consistent stance that issues should be resolved bilaterally and peacefully in an atmosphere free of terror and violence.
And the responsibility for creating that atmosphere.
The report explicitly places the onus on Pakistan to create such a conducive environment. The ball is seen as being in Pakistan's court regarding the conditions for normalization.
But some interaction did happen.
Yes. Despite the overarching concerns, India facilitated significant people-to-people exchanges, mainly religious pilgrimages. Thousands of Indian pilgrims visited Pakistan. Hundreds of Pakistani pilgrims visited India for specific events.
And the Kartarpur corridor.
That saw significant traffic. Over 84,000 pilgrims used it. There was also an exchange of prisoner lists, leading to the repatriation of nearly 500 Indian fishermen and some civilian prisoners from Pakistan.
Any high-level meetings.
Limited interactions on multilateral platforms like SCO meetings. The then Pakistani PM participated virtually in one summit. The foreign minister attended a meeting in Goa.
But underlying concerns remain.
Very much so. The report clearly states India's ongoing concerns regarding incidents of vandalism, desecration of places of worship, discrimination, killing, abduction, forced conversion, and marriages of members of the minority communities in Pakistan. So it reflects that duality, a desire for normalcy, but persistent, serious concerns.
Right. Finally, for the neighborhood, Sri Lanka. They faced severe socioeconomic challenges recently. What was the progress in that relationship in 2023, especially given India's role in its recovery? Must have been a critical year.
Absolutely critical. Relations with Sri Lanka made substantial progress in 2023, very much in line with Neighborhood First and Sagar. High-level engagements continued.
Including a presidential visit.
Yes, the president of Sri Lanka visited India in July, meeting both the president and PM. Several key MASI were signed during this visit on renewable energy, economic development in Trincomalee, animal husbandry.
And digital payments.
Yes, a significant agreement for UPI acceptance in Sri Lanka, streamlining payments between the two countries. The external affairs minister also visited Sri Lanka in January.
And that huge aid package from 2022.
That was critical. India's extraordinary financial aid of USD 4 billion provided in 2022 really solidified ties in 2023. It was aimed directly at addressing Sri Lanka's severe socioeconomic challenges and played a pivotal role in its stabilization and recovery throughout the year, a crucial lifeline.
Okay, let's shift beyond the immediate neighbors. India's Act East policy focuses on Southeast Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific. What were the key highlights here in 2023? That region is so vital now.
Under Act East, India actively deepened its engagement. A key highlight was the PM's participation in the ASEAN India Summit and the East Asia Summit in Jakarta in September. Those are central platforms.
Bilateral talks, too.
Yes, significant talks with leaders from Vietnam, Singapore. Remember the virtual launch of the UPI Pay Now link? That happened then. And the Philippines.
Any state visits?
A significant one. The maiden state visit by King of Cambodia, marking 70 years of diplomatic relations. Very symbolic.
And security cooperation.
That advanced, too. India and ASEAN organized their first maritime exercise in South China Sea in May 2023. That indicates growing convergence on maritime security in a sensitive area.
Right.
Plus, India assumed the role of vice chair of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, IORA, for 2023-25, solidifying its leadership role in the Indian Ocean region. It's a multifaceted push eastward.
The Indo-Pacific region itself is so critical strategically. What exactly defines India's approach to this vast, complex region? What are its core principles?
India's approach is articulated quite clearly. It centers on advocating for a region that is free, open, inclusive, and governed by rules. It's a comprehensive vision for regional order.
What does that mean in practice?
Specifically, it emphasizes respecting the sovereignty and territorial boundaries of every nation foundational for stability. It stresses treating all nations equally, discouraging hierarchical power dynamics. Crucially, India believes in resolving conflicts peacefully, refraining from the use or threat of force, and strictly following international laws and rules. It aims for a stable, prosperous, secure Indo-Pacific, where all nations can thrive within a rules-based order.
A vision likely shared by many in the region.
It certainly resonates with many regional partners seeking stability and predictability.
And the Quad, Australia, Japan, US, India, that key grouping, saw significant activity. What were the main outcomes there in 2023, given its growing strategic importance?
The Quad indeed saw significant activity, reflecting its evolution into a platform for practical cooperation. The PM participated in the Quad Leaders Summit in Hiroshima in May.
What came out of that?
A major outcome was the release of a vision statement, articulating their shared principled approach for a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific, upholding sovereignty, territorial integrity, peaceful dispute resolution, reinforcing commitment to a rules-based order.
Beyond statements, any concrete actions?
Yes, definitely. They formed a working group on counterterrorism in New Delhi, and the leaders launched a wide array of initiatives: climate action, infrastructure, critical and emerging tech collaboration, like AI, quantum, secure cyberspace, health security, maritime data sharing, space cooperation, counterterrorism efforts across the region.
So a really broad agenda now.
It demonstrates the Quad's evolution from just dialogue to a robust platform for practical collaboration on shared strategic interests.
Okay, beyond the neighborhood and the immediate region, India has these robust relationships with global powers.
Yeah.
Let's start with the U.S. The report talks about a new momentum in 2023. What exactly propelled this, given the already strong ties?
Well, the comprehensive strategic global partnership between India and the U.S. is indeed founded on strong pillars: shared democratic principles, converging strategic interests, a common view of a rules-based order. What propelled the new momentum in 2023 was a series of incredibly intense, high-level engagements, really charting a futuristic roadmap, driven by 2 leader-level engagements and several wide-ranging high-level interactions.
Including the state visit.
Exactly. The historic state visit by the PM to the U.S. in June, at President Biden's invitation. Extensive talks, and notably, he addressed a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress, a rare honor, underscoring the partnership's depth.
And tangible outcomes from the visit.
Numerous announcements across critical sectors: advanced tech like semiconductors and AI, defense industrial collaboration, commerce, renewable energy, and crucially, people-to-people ties. It signaled a comprehensive, forward-looking expansion.
And the defense partnership specifically, that's often seen as a cornerstone.
Defense is definitely key, and it saw significant intensification in 2023. Deeper trust, interoperability. The 5th India-U.S. 2+2 ministerial dialogue in November in New Delhi was crucial.
What came out of the 2+2?
An intensification in joint military exercises, increased interoperability, strong emphasis on defense industrial collaborations, moving beyond just buying to joint production, like the GE jet engine deal.
Technology transfer too.
Yes. Vital for India's indigenous capabilities, its Atmanirbhar Bharat's goal in defense also boosted defense trade, deepened cooperation in maritime security, counter-piracy.
And the economic side.
Still huge. Bilateral trade hit USD 191 billion in 2022, making the U.S. India's largest goods trading partner. Plus, the inaugural meeting of the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, ICE, happened, focusing on cutting-edge tech collaboration.
Okay, now moving to Russia. How did India's ties with Moscow strengthen in 2023 amid that complex geopolitical scenario, especially the conflict in Europe? That relationship draws a lot of global attention.
The report states quite clearly that India-Russia ties continued to strengthen, reflecting the shared interests in a complicated geopolitical scenario. Despite the international context, sanctions, the conflict, the relationship maintained its trajectory.
High-level contact continued.
Yes. The PM had multiple phone conversations with President Putin. President Putin participated in the virtual G20 Leaders Summit chaired by India. The External Affairs Minister visited Moscow in December for detailed discussions across the board, bilateral and regional, and met President Putin, too.
And economically.
A dramatic surge. Bilateral trade increased by more than 3 times to USD 49.4 billion in 2022-23.
More than 3 times, wow.
A significant jump, making Russia India's 5th largest trading partner. This indicates deepening economic interdependence, particularly in areas like energy, and underscores India's pragmatic approach, prioritizing national interests and long-standing partnerships amidst complexities.
Right. Europe and the EU also saw renewed momentum.
Yeah.
What were some significant diplomatic milestones there, particularly with key countries like France, Italy? Seems like a concerted push.
Absolutely. Relations with European countries and the EU witnessed significant renewed momentum. High-level meetings, summits.
Any firsts?
The president undertook her first visit to Europe, a state visit to Serbia, historic first by a head of state from either country. The PM visited Greece and France, underscoring strategic engagement.
And the EU specifically.
A crucial institutional development was the India-EU Trade and Technology Council, the TTC meeting in Brussels, facilitating exchange of critical tech, AI, quantum, semiconductors, cybersecurity. Very future-focused.
And France, a big anniversary year.
Yes, 2023 marked 25 years of India-France strategic partnership. Huge milestone. The PM visited France, attended Bastille Day as guest of honor, a special invitation, and he was conferred France's highest honor, the Grand Cross of the Légion d'honneur.
Major recognitions. Others too.
India's relations with Italy were upgraded to a strategic partnership, with Greece also elevated to a strategic partnership during the PM's visit, where he received the Grand Cross of the Order of Honor, first foreign head of government to get it.
So a real multidimensional push across Europe.
Proactive, focusing on strategic, economic, technological collaboration.
And India's relationship with China. The report calls it complex. What was the state of play there in 2023, particularly concerning those lingering border issues, still a critical area of tension?
Complex is indeed the word, perhaps an understatement. The primary factor remains the border situation. The report states clearly, Chinese attempts to unilaterally alter the status quo along the LAC, starting from April-May 2020, have disturbed the peace and tranquility.
So India sees China's actions as the core issue.
That's the stated perception, yes, a unilateral deviation. Both nations are engaged in efforts to resolve these LAC issues in eastern Ladakh through the WMCC talks, senior military commanders' dialogues.
Any progress from those talks?
The report notes this ongoing dialogue has led to disengagements in various areas, so some progress, albeit slow. Discussions continue with India's stated aim for early disengagement in remaining areas, resumption of patrolling, and restoration of peace.
And high-level meetings.
They happened in 2023 on sidelines of G20, SCO, etc. India consistently emphasized the need for resolving outstanding issues for normalcy, underlining its position that real normalcy requires border resolution based on mutual respect, sensitivity, and interests.
So engagement continues, but the border issue heavily impacts the relationship.
Significantly, yes.
Moving to the Gulf countries, critical for India.
Yeah.
Trade, energy, the huge diaspora. How did those historically significant ties deepen in 2023?
The historic and deep-rooted relationship with Gulf countries indeed continued to deepen significantly. High-level political engagements were frequent and impactful.
Like with the UAE.
The PM met the UAE president 3 times in 2023 alone. During the PM's visit to UAE, the UAE president's visit for G20, and during COP28. Shows close rapport.
And Saudi Arabia?
The Saudi Crown Prince visited for G20 and a state visit, co-chairing the first leaders meeting of the India-Saudi Strategic Partnership Council, a new, significant framework. The Sultan of Oman also paid a state visit.
Economically.
The GCC was India's top regional grouping for trade, exceeding USD 184 billion in 2022-23. Robust investment flows, substantial energy imports vital for India's security.
And the diaspora.
The 8.7 million strong Indian community remains a powerful bridge, contributing significantly through remittances and fostering deep cultural ties.
Israel is also mentioned as a strategic partner under the I2U2 framework. What was the focus there in 2023, especially given regional developments later in the year?
Under ITU-2, India, Israel, UAE, US, the partnership with Israel remains strategically focused. The PM met President Herzog on the sidelines of COP28 in December.
What was discussed then, given the October 7th events?
The PM conveyed condolences on the loss of lives from the terror attacks, welcomed hostage releases, and reiterated the critical need for continued humanitarian aid for the affected population in the region, a principled stance.
And the ITU-2 framework itself.
As strategic partners, the four nations had agreed to increase joint investment in 6 key areas: water, energy, transport, space, health, and food security. Focusing on critical tech and shared global challenges, a multilateral approach to development and security.
Farrick. The report also details extensive engagements with Africa and Latin America, increasingly important regions. Key takeaways from India's efforts there.
India maintained a special focus on Africa, rooted in historical solidarity, shared global South identity. A major achievement demonstrating this was India's successful effort ensuring the African Union became a permanent G20 member.
The huge win for AU representation.
Absolutely. Elevates Africa's voice significantly. Development partnership continued extensively projects in drinking water, irrigation, solar power, healthcare, tailored to local needs.
Trade.
Bilateral trade stood at about USD 98 billion in 2022-23, robust and growing. India also opened a new mission in Cabo Verde.
And education links.
Of a particular highlight, the inauguration of the first offshore campuses of IIT Madras in Zanzibar, Tanzania, and the National Forensic Science University in Jinja, Uganda. Huge for capacity building in Africa. And in Latin America and the Caribbean, LAC. India focused on strengthening relations, diversifying engagement across 33 countries. The president participated virtually in the CELAC summit as a special guest.
Recognition there, too.
Yes, during her visit to Suriname, the president received their highest civilian honor, the Grand Order of the Chain of Yellow Star.
And trade with LAC.
Surged remarkably to almost USD 50 billion during 2022-23. Rapid growth. Plus, an Indian embassy was formally inaugurated in the Dominican Republic, expanding the diplomatic footprint. A comprehensive push across the Global South.
India has clearly been a vocal advocate for the Global South, especially on issues like climate change. What was India's role at COP28 in Dubai, balancing its own needs with global concerns?
At COP28, India played a very active vocal role, particularly championing Global South concerns. The PM participated in the session on transforming climate finance.
What was the key message?
He specifically emphasized the Global South's concerns and priorities. Crucial because developing nations often face disproportionate climate impacts despite lower historical emissions. He stressed the need for adequate climate finance for them to achieve climate goals and NDCs.
So linking action to finance.
Absolutely. Underscoring that ambition needs substantial support for transition and adaptation. Importantly, India welcomed the establishment of the Loss and Damage Fund, a step towards compensating vulnerable nations, and acknowledged the UAE's Climate Investment Fund.
So positioning itself as a bridge.
Exactly. A crucial bridge between developed and developing nations, advocating for equitable, inclusive climate solutions.
And India's commitment to the UN, particularly regarding Security Council reform, peacekeeping, long-standing, complex areas. How was that demonstrated in 2023?
India remained an active and engaged member of the UN, strongly advocating for a more representative, effective global order. The EAM led the delegation to the UNGA High-Level Week.
And the push for UNSC reform.
That's a core tenet. India continued efforts to move the process forward, engaging actively in the intergovernmental negotiations, the IGN process. Notably, for the first time, IGN had in-person meetings with webcasting, started a digital repository pushing for transparency and progress.
Voicing Global South concerns at the UN, too.
Strongly, particularly on terrorism response and advocating for a clear roadmap for reformed multilateralism central to India's vision for more equitable global governance.
And peacekeeping.
India reinforced its deep legacy as the largest cumulative contributor to UN peacekeeping, over 278,000 troops since the 1950s. As of late 2023, it ranked third with over 6,000 personnel across 10 missions.
A significant ongoing commitment.
Huge commitment. And sadly, the report notes 178 Indian peacekeepers had sacrificed their lives by end 2023, underscoring the human cost of this dedication.
The report also highlights cross-cutting themes like development cooperation and emerging technologies. These sound fundamental to India's foreign policy toolkit. Can you elaborate?
Development cooperation is indeed described as a pivotal component, and its scope has expanded significantly. It's a comprehensive array of instruments.
More than just grants.
Much more. Yes, grant assistance, but also lines of credit, concessional financing, high-impact community development projects, tangible local benefits, technical consultancy, expertise sharing.
And aid in crises.
Yes, disaster relief and humanitarian aid, that first responder role again. Plus, long-term capacity building through educational scholarships and extensive civilian and military training under the ITEC program. It's a very diverse, flexible toolkit. And on emerging technologies, India strengthened efforts towards collaboration, bilateral, plurilateral, multilateral, actively participated in numerous cyber dialogues with key partners.
Focusing on what in cyber?
Critical issues: cybersecurity, data protection, cybercrime, internet governance, consulting various government stakeholders, a proactive stance on shaping the digital landscape securely. Simultaneously promoting economic interests through trade and investment interactions, achieving significant milestones in promoting foreign investment, bilateral trade, tourism, education, and healthcare.
India also made significant strides in facilitating global mobility and engaging with its diaspora. What were the key achievements here? That diaspora is huge and globally spread.
India indeed focused strongly on this, worked on establishing institutional mechanisms for global mobility of Indian workers, students, academicians, researchers, business persons.
Through agreements.
Exactly. Engaging partners to conclude agreements like Migration and Mobility Partnership and Labor Mobility and Labor Welfare Agreements. In 2023 alone, signed with Austria, Australia, Italy, Mauritius, Israel, creating legal frameworks for orderly migration, ensuring welfare.
And passport services.
The Ministry of External Affairs rendered a record 1.64 core passport services in 2023, 16.4 million, emphasizing timely, transparent delivery.
And the diaspora's role.
Still immense. Over 32 million strong, a powerful economic and cultural bridge. India remained the top remittance receiving country with inflows of USD 125 billion in 2023. Huge economic contribution.
Any major diaspora events?
The 17th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention in Indore, first physical one in 4 years due to COVID, drew about 3,500 diaspora members from 70 countries, reflecting that strong connection.
Finally, let's look behind the curtain, at the Ministry of External Affairs itself. What internal developments, initiatives strengthened India's diplomatic machinery in 2023, enabling it to execute such an ambitious foreign policy?
The MEA significantly strengthened its foundations, reflecting strategic expansion and modernization. Crucial for a rising power, a key internal development approval for the 5th Cadre Review of the Indian Foreign Service.
What does a cadre review involve?
Essentially a strategic overhaul of personnel, ensuring the diplomatic corps is optimally structured, staffed, skilled for future challenges, and expanding responsibilities.
Expanding footprint, too.
Yes. Approval was granted for opening 09 new missions between 2023-27, including a new mission in Timor-Leste, consulates in Marseille, France, and Brisbane, Australia. Strategic expansion.
And training.
The Sushma Swaraj Institute of Foreign Service conducted various training programs for its own officers, other civil services, and importantly, foreign diplomats. Notable was the first Global South Young Diplomats Forum with participants from 30 countries, fostering future ties, plus the 70th course for foreign diplomats from 52 countries, commitment to knowledge sharing.
Cultural diplomacy is often called soft power. How did India actively use this in 2023 beyond traditional channels?
Cultural diplomacy truly thrived, a significant and effective component of soft power projection. During India's SEO presidency, Varanasi was nominated the first ever SEO tourism and cultural capital.
UNESCO recognition, too.
Yes. 2 significant sites, the sacred ensembles of Hoysalas and Santiniketan, earned UNESCO World Heritage status. Plus, the Gujarati folk dance Garba was inscribed on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage List.
Cities recognized as well.
2 cities in the UNESCO Creative Cities Network, Kozhikode as City of Literature, Gwalior as City of Music, showcasing diverse creative strengths.
And language promotion.
The World Hindi Conference in Fiji saw representation from 50 countries, emphasizing Hindi's growing prominence. The ICCR, the Cultural Council, offered nearly 3,800 scholarships to foreign nationals, supported 38 Indian cultural centers worldwide, sponsored cultural delegations, sent statues abroad. Multifaceted initiatives.
And finally, how effective was the MEA in its digital outreach and public engagement? crucial in today's world.
Digital outreach was indeed a significant focus. The ministry actively used social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Flickr, LinkedIn, to disseminate information widely, reach domestic and international audiences, ensuring timely, accessible info on policy, services, engagement.
Beyond social media.
They also co-hosted several important international conferences, vital platforms for intellectual exchange, including its 4 flagship annual conferences: Raisina Dialogue, Geopolitics, Global Technology Summit, Asian Economic Dialogue, and the Indian Ocean Conference.
So using multiple channels for engagement?
Exactly. These conferences served as crucial platforms for high-level discussions, networking, projecting India's perspectives, all benefiting from and contributing to that comprehensive digital outreach strategy. Hashtag tag outro.
So as we pull back from this deep dive into India's foreign policy in 2023, it's, well, abundantly clear this wasn't just a busy year. It was truly strategically significant.
Absolutely.
We've seen India confidently navigate that incredibly complex global landscape, leading on major platforms like the G20, strengthening vital partnerships across continents, and extending its humanitarian reach in really remarkable, tangible ways.
It's a picture of a nation actively shaping its role. Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, 2023 truly exemplifies India's rising stature, an actor not just capable of contributing to, but also profoundly shaping the international agenda.
From the G20 consensus.
Exactly, from that unprecedented consensus despite deep divisions, to the meticulous depth of its bilateral engagements, neighborhood, global powers. It highlights a foreign policy that's both pragmatic, pursuing national interests, but also deeply rooted in that ancient philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. That blend of strategic realism and inclusive vision really defines its approach, I think.
What stands out to me from all of this is just the sheer breadth and ambition. From global summits and huge economic corridors like IMFM, down to being a first responder with hyperlocal aid and that vibrant cultural diplomacy. It's vast.
It really is.
It makes you wonder, given this trajectory, its unique position in the global south, what new challenges and opportunities will arise for India's global role in the coming years?
That's a powerful question to consider, isn't it? This raises an important point. How will India's growing economic clout and its unique identity as a leading voice for the global south continue to reshape multilateral institutions, global norms, pushing for greater inclusivity?
Right.
And in an increasingly fragmented, crisis-prone world, what will be the lasting impact of its actively cultivated first responder identity on international cooperation and humanitarian efforts, especially as it seeks to build resilience across vulnerable regions?
Those are indeed crucial questions, ones that will undoubtedly define India's evolving imprint on the global stage. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope it's giving you, our listeners, a deeper, more nuanced understanding of a truly pivotal year in global diplomacy.